much. So basically I'll take you through the two issues as quick as I can. So Khan al-Ahmar is a village. It's in the occupied West Bank. It's just east of Jerusalem. It's near two large Israeli settlements, Ma'ale Adumim and Kfar Adumim. There's also an Israeli industrial close by. The villagers living there are the descendants of Bedouins who would have been living in the Negev but were expelled by the Israeli government in the 1950s. So recently, on September 5th, the Israeli's highest court upheld an order to demolish the entire village. This has been in the offing for quite some time, and there's been a lot of legal challenges. Unfortunately now, as this ruling means that the village can be demolished, its residents forcibly transferred any time from September 12th. I'm sure the committee is aware of the frequent demolitions of Palestinian homes, of Palestinian schools, agricultural structures across the West Bank. Our observers have frequently witnessed either demolitions or the aftermath of demolitions. Like those demolitions, the demolition of Khan al-Ahmar will result, and the resulting transfer of the 200 residents, including about 100 children, will be a grave breach of the Geneva Convention and a war crime under the Statutes of Rome. These demolitions, though, are, as we said at the beginning, this is a new crisis. This marks a turning point in a way. Simon Coveney himself on Taoiseach said, the communities are located in a particularly sensitive part of Area C in the West Bank, an area which is crucial for the viability of a future Palestinian state. Any attempt to develop the land for illegal settlements is therefore a threat to the two-state solution. Building settlements in this area would encircle East Jerusalem. It would cut off East Jerusalem from the rest of Palestine. It would also essentially cut the West Bank in two, in the north and south. You know, again, threatening any future Palestinian state, making any contiguous Palestinian states impossible to build. Due to the sensitive nature of this area, much of the international community has spoken out frequently, calling on Israeli authorities not to demolish the village and stating there would be serious consequences. Our position is that if we are serious about peace and justice in the region, we cannot allow this demolition to happen, or at least it cannot happen without consequences. There was a joint statement by France, Germany, Italy, Spain and the United Kingdom on September 10th, which has condemned the decision, but contained little and meaningful action. And when it spoke of consequences, it talked about the consequences, the negative consequences for the Bedouin community who would be losing their homes. What we are saying now is what is needed is action. And I think it's just, since I sent in the briefing that some of you may have seen, there has been a call from leaders in the community for a greater international presence. Many of our eyewitnesses are there, many of our EAs, as we call them, are there. There has been a call for a constant international presence, an overnight international presence, to provide that protective presence to the villagers. And I think I just want to read one quote that was sent to us by one of the EAs who's currently in the village. She said, one woman told us that the perpetual uncertainty means that we are just cooking, cleaning and eating, rather than making long-term plans or improvements to homes. In the approach to the wedding season, the lack of such plans is really notable. Meanwhile, the people are watched by drones. The school teachers reported a dramatic fall in school results. Mothers tell us their children wet the bed and jump every time a new vehicle arrives. I'm just going to leave it there, and I'm going to move on to the issue of the UNRWA funding. So 95% of Khan al-Ahmar, of the residents in Khan al-Ahmar, are already refugees from the Negev. Should the demolitions go ahead, they'll end up relying even further on the United Nations Relief Works Agency in Palestine and the Near East, for Palestine refugees in the Near East, which thankfully is known by the shorter moniker of UNRWA. As the committee are probably aware, the United States has recently ended all funding to UNRWA. Cuts which the Commissioner General of UNRWA has described as an existential threat. Again, since sending this presentation to you last week, there have been further cuts announced. So there have been 25 million in cuts to hospitals, Palestinian hospitals in East Jerusalem by the American regime. There have been 10 million of cuts to peace-building work, so supporting NGOs on the ground who would try and do this peace-building work, they've also had their funding cut by the Americans. So there is a general defunding of any sort of work in the region to try and promote peace, to try and promote justice, to try and alleviate the suffering that is there. While I was in Bethlehem, based in Bethlehem, we were close to Ida refugee camp. I spent a lot of time in Ida refugee camp. It's one of several refugee camps around in the Bethlehem city, in the Bethlehem area. In Ida, there's about 3,000 refugees, just 3,150 or so. They live in dense, cramped, poor conditions. Poverty and unemployment are high. It's right next to the separation barrier and a military base. There are frequent clashes. When you walk down in the morning, it's often, the smell of tear gas is never far away. The smell of the lingering smell of the skunk water is never far away. The camp is regularly choked with tear gas. Against this difficult background, UNRWA provides education, psychosocial support for children in the camp. Support for food for families, food support, health services. Access to education is a difficulty for Palestinian children at the best of times. It's something that we work on in EAPPI. It's something that UNICEF have worked on as well. So to lose the funding for schools will be a huge impact. Alongside this, there are some 30,000 Palestinian doctors, nurses, teachers and other staff employed by UNRWA who will face unemployment and therefore the prospect of poverty. In Gaza, the unemployment rate is something like 44%, and that will be even more should UNRWA collapse. And the US cuts really represent an attempt to undermine the international legal consensus on the protected status of Palestine refugees, and so is an attempt ultimately to undermine international law. These cuts threaten what stability currently exists in the region, and there is a growing sense of despair and nihilism among Palestinians that really will only fuel the frustration that they feel and the desperation, and will ultimately potentially feed into violence and extremism. I think I'm going to leave you with a quote from the UNRWA Commissioner General, who, in an open letter to Palestine refugees and UNRWA staff on September 1st, said, "The responsibility for the protracted nature of the Palestine refugeehood, the growing number of refugees and the growth in the needs lies squarely with the parties and in the international community's lack of will or utter inability to bring about a negotiated and peaceful resolution to the conflict between Israel and Palestine. The attempt to make UNRWA somehow responsible for perpetuating the crisis is disingenuous at best."